Welcome to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Gratitude is the beginning of joy. Consider product placement with Just Minding My Business Media, LLC. Visit our website at jmmbmediallc.com to discover digital products to 10x your business. Contact us at jmmbradio@gmail.com. Edward Beltran is a leader at Fierce, an organization focused on company culture, how to solve cultural challenges in corporate environments, and alleviating stress in corporate communications. Fierce uses 3D VR tools to conduct corporate training that addresses accountability, confrontation, efficiency, and productivity. This training can turn difficult situations into opportunities to thrive. There is new terminology here that you, our audience, may not be familiar with. So grab a pen and your notebook and listen up. Welcome, Edward.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome. So let's start with some beginnings. How did you get on this road? What brought you in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Fierce has been in business for over 20 years. I came on board 5 years ago after having a career myself over 20 years. And what brought me to Fierce was the fact that I've had the opportunity to see great leadership and not so great leadership. I had the opportunity to support CEOs of large Fortune 500 companies, and I actually had an externship with Warren Buffett. And when I started going to different sized companies, I started realizing a theme around bad leadership. And a lot of times it had to do with insecurities and not having the right tools and how you interact in situations. So I was very passionate about that, but more importantly, how do we give these tools to the world? And so when you opened up there, you mentioned some of the things that we do, 3D VR simulations, which gets people closer to application and in the scenario they're going to be in their lives versus just theory, if you will. But we also do in-class and we also do virtual instruction as well. But I'm happy to get more details, but thank you. But that's what brought me to Fierce, is just our passion about helping the world one conversation at a time.
That's awesome. Because in today's world, I think that the good old boy, the corporate structure from the 1980s is not working. You know, even with the older generation that are in positions, they're starting to think differently. And we already know the millennials are. Yep. They're actually the ones that are pushing this change, because it's important to make sure the culture is correct in your company. I think I read somewhere that your employees are your biggest advertisers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If they don't talk good about you, then, oh my gosh. So tell us about the tools that you use.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to explore what you said a little bit further, because I think the change in demographics is really huge, and it's a huge impact on what's happening in the workforce. So for example, Ida and Ruth, I'm sure this happened to you in your careers early on, just like it did with me, which is you're told never let them see you sweat, or just get back up and be tough. And right, for us, that's what resilience was, right? It's you didn't have a choice. No one was like, hey, how you feeling today, Ed? No, it's just you got to shake it off and just do what you got to do. But the new generations now are demanding a new definition of resilience. And it's the employer's responsibility now to understand what's impacting them in the workplace. An HBR article that came out not too long ago defined resilience, because I didn't know what it was. Like I said, we said resilience. I'm like, okay, dust yourself off. Right? And the number one taxer of resilience that they quantified, 78% of respondents said dealing with politics and difficult personalities in the workplace. Now that's staggering. Now you're getting down to the tangibility and what people are dealing with in the workforce, but more importantly, what skills do they need to be able to interface with these scenarios and eliminate them for their own stress? So that's what we at here Fierce have done for the last 20 years is we've given the tools to address these. So for example, difficult people in the workplace or politics, you want to be able to give feedback. Ida, here's observable behaviors that I saw in you. Let's talk about this, right? So it's just not a one-sided diatribe like, oh, you're rude to me. It's giving people tangibles to be able to latch onto. And what we found in our research is this eliminates stress. But it makes sense, Ida and Ruth, if you think about it. Just think about all the interactions you have in your day. You have a couple choices. One is you can sit back and say, I'm confused, right? What did that mean? That increases your stress. The other one is you're offended. Why did this person say this to me? You walk away and tell 3 other people. That amplifies the toxicity in the workplace, right? It gives people bad reputations when in our research, 90% of the time, it's a misunderstanding. It's unintentional. So instead, using our tools, you engage the scenario. You say, let's talk about this. This is what I observed. What was happening for you? And the person could say, I'm sorry. I didn't know it had that impact. I was having a tough day. Or it was a mistake. I'm sorry. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to explain that. And Ida and Ruth, the other big impacts that this has in our days today as well is around like race issues, right? So what we firmly believe in is where the rubber meets the road in unconscious bias is in these microaggressions. It's these day-to-day interactions. So I'm 6 foot, close to 6'2". I'm Mexican. And I can't tell you how many times people said, are you sure you're Mexican? In the workplace. Right? Like the unconscious bias being that Mexicans are short and don't speak English, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, again, it's how you handle those scenarios.
Right.
Wow.
That's huge. This is huge. I needed decades ago, but we're finally at a place where I think people can hear you. I think if this had come up decades ago, people would not have been able to hear you. But considering the times in which we're living, it is so absolutely rational, applicable, and necessary. These are things that are just a whole lot of things go on in the workplace.
Yes.
That are just unconscionable. And it does create headache, heartache, and bad feelings.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then it leads to what we're seeing as well, right? You can't open up the news without seeing the Great Resignation or people switching jobs. And the reason for that is because without people having these tool sets, they see it as binary, like, oh, it's a difficult environment, I got to quit, right? Versus, I could actually have an impact on this. I could actually find out more of what's happening. Or a leader who's not self-aware, I could help them become self-aware, right? And it eliminates your stress, and it also drives the impacts that you desire. That's the shifts that we would love to make, because that's where the rubber meets the road with culture. Ida, Ruth, you two are the culture, right? You're the culture. It's not something that someone made up in a boardroom and do on a poster, right? It's the people and the interactions day to day that make up the culture, be it toxic or be it a thriving culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I work with toxic people. I get where you're coming from, it makes the day more stressful than it needs to be. You're always in a position, and then it makes you afraid to speak up when you and bring your ideas, because you feel as though they're going to be knocked down from the door. So you say nothing.
Exactly.
So the tools that you have, I mean, when you walk into a company, describe what that looks like that wants to change their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to tell you what our historical traditional tools are, and I'd love to tell you about an innovation that we've launched today that gets you even closer to identification. So our historical model is we'll go into a company and we'll instruct for a couple of days the material, if you will, and people love it. Our NPS scores are very high, and then they go out in the real world and they'll use our apps to be able to prime themselves on when they have a confront conversation, a feedback conversation. What we've done since the pandemic and just kind of like this acceleration in digital solutions is we've used 3D VR simulations, so kind of like the metaverse, a buzzword that's been thrown around, to be able to put people in the exact scenario that they would face that they're more comfortable with, and give them the punchline and these short drive the scenario yourself examples in like 15 minutes or less. So for example, we've done this with microaggressions. So it's easy for you to say, oh, okay, give feedback if someone gives you a microaggression. It's another thing to have the confidence and the practice to do it. Your boss just made an offensive remark. What are you going to do, right? But there's a way to do it. There's a science to doing it. It's coming together as individuals and saying, hey, here's something that's happened. Let's talk about this, right? This is the observable behaviors, what was showing up for you. And again, it was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that. And it's like, okay, well, let's work through this. If this doesn't change, we're going to have to escalate it, right? So there's a two-step process. So again, it's giving people the tools and the confidence to do it, because it sounds easy in theory, right? Ida, confront someone that tells you something racist, right? And what I'm really excited, Ida and Ruth, about is that we now have taken this a step further, where we're using wearable devices, so like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, to help people identify the stress that they're having, merging it with their calendar events to be able to help them become self-aware. So the science says that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but only 10 to 15% think they really are. So it's helping them identify what is the thing that's actually stressing you out, because a lot of people think they know. But then more importantly, instead of just managing it, hey, let's have a better diet or better sleep or meditation, which is all great. I've been doing that for years. It's let's tackle this. Here are the tools to tackle it. And so we either use a physical coach who comes in to say, okay, let's analyze your data. What's showing up for you, Ida? What's your commitment to addressing this? Or we have an AI bot that actually walks you through it and connects you with resources right on the spot. So we're very happy for this, because I'm sure you're aware in the workforce, especially women, people of color have higher stress rates. How they absorb what's happening in the workplace is different. And we believe the science is because they don't feel the confidence of the tools, to what you said, Ida, that you're going to be heard, that what you're actually going to do is going to have an effect. But the tried and true techniques that we've been teaching show that they do. And it's getting people closer, making it easier for people to do it.
I like that.
There's a couple of things that you said. You mentioned microaggression. What exactly is that? I mean, for people who don't know.
That's a great question. And the way I love, the definition that I love is in a book called Do You Want to Talk About Race? And the way it's described is that not one event in and of itself is a problem, but it's like death by a million paper cuts or stings by bees. It changes your relationship with those bees, right? And so a microaggression could be in different contexts, but in the context of race, it's something that is inadvertent from the person. Like they don't assume bad intent, but it is offensive to the person. So the classic example I love to use is this, because it causes a lot of controversy. A employer calls in on a reference on a Black employee, and the referrer says, "Oh, I love him or her. They are articulate. They're articulate." And the person who was given the reference said, that's offensive. And the other person didn't know why. And the reason why it's a great story is because it went on a popular blog where she had no idea why it was offensive. And even when we use it internally, people are like, why is it offensive? I call everyone articulate. But the problem is that it's from the standpoint of the person receiving it, right? And the fact that the reference of, or the indication of, Black people are sometimes not articulate is a common theme that we see, right? So maybe that person was okay, meaning they had good intent, but the problem is they didn't have the tools to answer that question correctly for it to not to be offensive. And the proper way to do it is be very specific. This person had persuasive argument skills. They held a great leadership presence, and I would recommend him or her.
Yeah,
that's a great one. In addition to the one I told you, where people ask me, "Are you sure you're Mexican? Like, are you Mexican?" Because I'm 60. So it's not meant to be. People aren't aware, right? So the only way they're going to be aware is if you engage it and say, "Let's talk about this."
Okay.
Yes.
It's just amazing, because language, no matter how you look at it, language and the way that we use it is the way that we communicate. And if our language is off because of some personal bias that we may not be aware of, it's going to come out in our language. We don't know any better until someone helps us to see it, or until, unfortunately, there's some sort of really big conflagration, something blows up. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, what did they say? What was it about? And it's always about language.
Yes.
Language, we have yet to learn. We've been talking for how many thousands of years or more, and we still don't know how to talk to each other, which is amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing that we do not know how to talk to each other. Some of us talk to our cats and dogs better than we talk to
For sure. So if people want to get in touch with you and use your services, how do they do so?
You can go on our website at fierceinc.com, or I encourage you to sync up with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Edward J. Beltran, under Fierce, and we're happy to connect you with the relevant resources that you need. And as I mentioned, Pulse by Fierce, that's the innovation I was telling you about, where we're using our patented technology to go from Fitbit to stress to solution. Happy to get you connected with that as well.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, if someone is working in a company now, let's say they're the CEO, and they know that there's something going on in their company, how can they, aside from just reaching out to you and saying, hey, come fix us, what are some of the key indicators that there's a real problem in the company and the company culture? What are the key indicators that someone can look for?
Yeah, absolutely. Turnover obviously is a what I would call a lag indicator. Like, people have already hit the extent, but you'll see lack of innovation where you're trying to pull things through the organization and you don't know why. The reason why is because you could lay things out on paper, right? Like, hey, we're going to develop this innovation, or here's a new product. But once you start seeing these things fail, they're not on individuals. Many times they're more complex. They have to do with many intersections within the organization, from support, right, to needing resources cross-departmentally. When you start seeing these themes, there's something broken, something wrong. As you talked about, people aren't communicating or talking with one another. When you start seeing a lot more increase in like HR type of events, that's also an indicator. And clearly, when you start seeing kind of divisions, if you will, that's also an indicator. There's toxicity. People aren't talking to one another. And again, it comes down to that interaction, those day-to-day interactions of people, talking or not talking, both of which, if not done correctly, are a problem. And if you're not hitting your goals, your financial results, again, that's a lag indicator of a lot of different things. Organizations aren't a robot. They're individuals, people in the company, and there's a root problem comes down to how they're interacting.
Wow. Okay. That is an excellent answer.
That was a very good answer. And
hey, thank you.
You're going to be very, very busy, because so many companies fall into what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Many companies do. And unfortunately, some companies, the CEO needs a check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, companies feel like it's easier to do it the way we've been doing it than making the change, even though they can see all of those indicators that you mentioned, which is, to me, asinine, because your business, you're about making money. You can't make money if you have turnover.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make money if you have your processes are not in sync. And to train a new employee is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
absolutely.
Very expensive. I mean, I do IT for a living, and I set up new users. And I'm here to tell you, it has been a full-time job bringing in, setting up new people, and then a month later, they're gone. So, and we're paying for licenses, we're paying for laptops, equipment for these people to use, and they're gone.
Mm.
Or what I've seen happen is they leave and they come back, and then they leave again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So Ida, you being in IT, you're going to appreciate this. So an API is an application protocol interface. It's how computers talk to one another, right? So if you use that analogy, people were the same way. So you could put two computers next to each other, but if the API is not set correctly, they're not sharing information or data, right? So what we teach is the API in human-human communication, human-human connectivity. It's how two people can share information, right? Them just sitting next to each other doesn't necessarily happen by osmosis. So that you appreciate that analogy.
Wow. Okay. Got that one.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I am not an IT person at all.
Yeah.
At all. I can vouch for that. But it's interesting to see how our world is developing and how we are beginning to use technology in a way that is, I don't want to say more humane, but this is a humane application of technology. Let me put it that way. You're actually taking technology and using it in such a way that it brings people together. It's increasing our communication rather than making it more difficult to communicate. And that's what I'm hearing. Because so often in technology, it's, beep, 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 push this button, push that button, buy this computer, buy that computer. And some people get lost in that. We're still human. No matter what, at this point, we're still human. So we need to be able to understand and comprehend in ways that the human brain and human emotions can adapt to. And that's what I hear your company is doing. They're bringing that element into it. And it's really very interesting. It's actually fabulous. I hope you have tremendous, tremendous, tremendous success. You are so needed. Especially with all these new businesses coming up. They might as well learn how to do it the right way.
Exactly.
Because the old way, like Ida was saying, is gone. You can't walk in as a CEO of a company and say, this is the way it's going to be. And okay, what's the bottom line? And, there's human resources if you have a problem. It's not going to work anymore.
Yeah, exactly. By the time you go to human resources, it's too late.
Yes. Yes. And then it just brings more stress. Because anytime you have to go to human resources, it's never for anything good.
And you haven't necessarily solved the problem either, right? So that's one of the things that we advocate is that interfacing here, you have to go on with the intent of enriching the relationship.
Yes, absolutely.
Different way of looking at things.
Very different. Now,
okay, go ahead.
I got one question. On your website, do you have demonstrate how your software works?
Yeah, we do. I'll send you the link as well. But in our main website, you can see all our different solutions. But then we have a landing page for Pulse by Fierce. That's the name of our innovation that I've been talking about, the one where we connect the wearables and the stress event and the solutions. It's called Pulse by Fierce. And you can see the demo and a video and everything.
Okay.
I want to see that.
It's being really well received, as you can imagine, because one of the difficulties in coaching, right? Coaching is a big thing these days, right? And, everyone's a coach, right? One of the problems with coaching or even traditional therapies is that sometimes it takes many sessions to get down to the root cause. And then when you do get there, it's the perception of the user that's conveying what they believe the root cause is. Like, I'm making this up. Like, my wife's my problem, right? Like, that's the reason why I'm feeling this way or having difficulties. Like, I am. Okay, let's go with that. But with the way we're doing, what we believe with, sorry, I'm actually seeing my wearable, is that we're able to tie your biological responses to events. And so when we did our betas, we actually saw that with an individual where it was clear in his data, he was tagging work events and work events and home events. His work event stressors were higher than his work events. So he believed, and you would say on the surface, oh, your home life is very stressful. But that's not what was happening. What was happening is like what we're seeing now with COVID and all this other stuff. We're seeing a bleed over between work and home. And so once he got to that self-realization, like, oh, it's an issue because I'm not setting proper boundaries with work and home, then we were able to give him the tools to have the conversation with his boss to be able to say, here's my capacity. Here's when I'm realistically available outside of any type of emergencies. And here's where I am from a capacity perspective. And at home, the same thing. This is when I'm really available. His stress dropped within 2 weeks after that one coaching session, 14%.
Wow.
But it makes sense because you're getting right down to what you're dealing with. So if you have the device, Ida, for example, I could tell you what your biggest stress event was yesterday. I could be like, hey, at 4 p.m. when you were doing this is what your body was having a reaction to. What's going on there?
Definitely like
Very
this.
interesting.
Very, very interesting. Do we have to come back and do a demo for
Oh,
us?
I'd love to.
Yeah, we need to do a demo so that people can actually see it in action. Yes, we definitely gonna come back. Definitely gonna come back. And again, how do people get in contact with you?
Yeah, Fierce Inc. So standard spelling Fierce, FIERCEINC Inc.com is our web page. So we have many different ways to contact us off of different solutions, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, Edward J. Beltran, Fierce CEO Fierce. You can't miss me. So,
okay, I will definitely be connecting, and we are so grateful that you graced our platform today with this important information. We want you to come back for a demo.
I'd be happy to be back, Ida and Ruth. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.